It was 7:58 in the morning when the city still felt half asleep, but inside the 32nd floor of Coal Industries, time was running out. The rain hit the glass walls like slow tears, sliding down the tall windows of the billionaire's office. The sky outside was gray and heavy, and so was the heart of the man sitting inside, Richard Cole, once the king of real estate, now one step away from losing everything. His empire, his legacy, his pride, all reduced to a stack of papers waiting for his signature. The silence was unbearable. His pen rested between his fingers, trembling slightly. The only sound came from the ticking clock and the quiet hum of fluorescent lights above. Across the room, his lawyers whispered, pretending not to notice how broken he looked. They had already written him off. One of them leaned in, sliding the folder forward with a polished smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Sir, they're waiting for your signature," he said. The words cut through the air like a sentence. Richard's eyes fell to the papers. He couldn't believe this was where life had brought him, from private jets and Forbes covers to a chair in his own office, about to sign his empire away. His reflection in the glass window looked nothing like the man who had once built cities out of dreams. His suit hung loose, his tie was undone, and the watch that once gleamed with pride was gone, pawned off weeks ago to pay legal fees. But there was someone else in the room, someone no one paid attention to. Maria, the cleaning lady. A quiet black woman in a faded blue uniform, her hands rough from years of scrubbing marble floors and wiping fingerprints off glass doors. She moved carefully, pushing her mop bucket across the hallway outside, humming softly to herself, the kind of tune that carried sadness and peace at once. She had been cleaning this building for years, had seen men come and go, some too arrogant to notice her, some too broken to even look up. But that morning, when she glanced inside the conference room, something about the air felt different. She paused by the doorway, pretending to wipe the doorframe, but really watching. Richard Cole looked defeated, his shoulders heavy, his soul smaller than the suit he wore. And yet, everyone around him acted as if it were just another business day. One lawyer laughed quietly with another. The assistant scrolled on her phone. It was like watching a funeral no one cared to attend. Maria pushed her mop forward, her reflection stretching across the polished floor, and as she moved closer to the conference table, her eyes caught something strange. The corner of the top paper was folded in an odd way, revealing a line of text she hadn't noticed before. A small, fine-print sentence near the bottom of the page. It looked wrong. Out of place. She wasn't a lawyer, but years of cleaning meant years of observation. She remembered patterns, she noticed details, things most people overlooked. And this detail made her heart beat faster. Her eyes squinted. It said something about immediate transfer of controlling rights. Transfer. She frowned, leaning slightly closer as she pretended to adjust the trash bin. She remembered seeing those papers last week while cleaning his office late one evening. Back then, the bottom line wasn't there. She was sure of it. Inside the room, Richard took a deep breath. He stared down at the document. His hands shook as he picked up the pen. It all felt unreal. Decades of work, hundreds of sleepless nights, thousands of people on his payroll, all of it about to vanish with a single signature. His lawyer, standing beside him, whispered, "It's for the best, sir. Let's close this chapter cleanly." But Maria couldn't stand it anymore. Her chest tightened. She looked around, realizing no one else would say anything. She was just the cleaning lady, invisible, replaceable, unheard. What if she was wrong? What if speaking up cost her this job, her only income? But what if she was right, and stayed silent? The clock ticked again. 7:59. Richard leaned forward, pen hovering over the paper. And then, in a trembling voice that seemed to come from deep within her chest, Maria spoke. "Sir." The word was barely above a whisper, but it echoed like thunder in that quiet boardroom. Everyone turned. Richard froze mid-motion. The pen hovered an inch from the paper. He looked up, eyes narrowing. Maria's heart pounded. "Sir," she said again, louder this time, her voice shaking. I think you should read the last line again." For a second, no one moved. Then came the scoffs. One lawyer laughed sharply. "Excuse me, ma'am, this is a confidential meeting. Please go back to your work." Richard didn't say anything. He just stared at her. Her faded uniform. Her tired eyes. The mop dripping water onto the pristine floor. He saw a woman who shouldn't have spoken, yet she had. "What did you say?" he asked quietly. Maria swallowed hard. Her throat felt dry. "The last line," she said again. "It wasn't there before. I clean your office every night, sir. I saw those papers. That line wasn't there." The lawyers looked at each other, shaking their heads. "She's mistaken," one said, forcing a laugh. "It's just fine print, standard clause." But Richard's hand trembled. He bent forward, eyes narrowing at the bottom of the page. The words were small, easy to miss, but deadly. Transfer of controlling rights. A single sentence that changed everything. He flipped the page, scanning faster now, heartbeat pounding in his ears. His face drained of color. He looked up slowly, and when his eyes met hers, the room seemed to shrink. "How did you see that?" he asked softly. Maria's voice was barely a breath. "I didn't. I just remembered." "Remembered what?" Her eyes dropped to the floor. "My son. He wanted to be a lawyer before he passed. He used to study these documents on the kitchen table. He taught me what to look for." For a moment, the world stood still. The powerful billionaire and the cleaning lady. Two lives that were never meant to collide, now bound by one act of courage. The rain outside fell harder, the clock struck 8, and somewhere in the distance, thunder rolled. The lawyers shifted uneasily, sensing the change in the air. Richard laid the pen down and looked at the woman no one saw, and realized she had just seen everything. In that second, a billion-dollar mistake had been stopped by someone who didn't even have a seat at the table. And yet, as silence filled the room, Maria felt her hands shaking. She didn't know what would come next. Whether she had saved a man or doomed herself. Whether the truth would matter or be buried by power. But for now, one thing was certain. The billionaire's signature never touched the page. The air in the boardroom turned heavy, thick enough to choke on. You could almost hear the tension settling like dust. For a few long seconds, no one spoke. Maria stood there, frozen, her hand gripping the mop handle so tightly her knuckles went white. She wanted to disappear, to melt into the marble floors she had cleaned for years. But she couldn't take back what she said. The words were already out, echoing in a room where her voice was never meant to be heard. Then came the first sound, laughter. Sharp, cutting, cruel. One of the lawyers leaned back in his chair, smirking. "She's mistaken," he said. "For God's sake, she's the janitor. Miss, please, go back to your work. This isn't the place for—" His eyes flicked over her uniform, dismissing her completely. "This kind of interruption." Maria lowered her gaze, her lips pressed tight. Her throat burned, but she didn't move. Inside, she felt small, but something in her refused to back down. She'd seen too many things in this building, heard too many whispers behind doors she scrubbed every night. She'd learned what greed sounded like, how lies could wear perfume and expensive suits. Richard Cole didn't laugh. He didn't move. He just stared at her, eyes full of something no one had seen in him for years, uncertainty. He had always trusted his lawyers, his advisors, his numbers. But now, his instincts screamed something else. He looked back down at the papers, the rain pounding harder against the windows behind him. "Let her explain," he said. That silenced the room. One lawyer stammered. "Sir, we don't have time for this." Richard's voice cut like steel. "Let her talk." Maria's heart thudded in her chest. The mop handle trembled in her grip. She could feel everyone's eyes drilling into her, their contempt like heat. But she took a slow breath, stepped forward, and spoke, softly at first, but steady. "That line at the bottom," she said, pointing with a cautious finger. "It wasn't there before. I clean here every morning, and I've seen those papers sitting on your desk all week. It's different now." The lead attorney rolled his eyes. "You think you remember a line of fine print? You must be confused." "I'm not confused," Maria said, her voice firmer this time. "It says your company's rights will be transferred to another account right after you sign. I've seen papers like that before, when the accounting staff were fired last month. One of them left a draft in the trash. It looked the same." Her voice cracked at the end, but the words hit hard. The room fell dead silent. You could almost hear the rain tapping against the glass, the slow drip of mop water on the marble floor. Richard leaned closer to the paper, his brow furrowing. His fingers trembled slightly as he traced the words she mentioned. The air seemed to hum with danger. His lawyer tried to interject again, nervous now. "Sir, this is ridiculous." But Richard wasn't listening. His breathing changed. Faster now. Deeper. He flipped another page, then another. And with every turn, the truth started to reveal itself like rot under a polished surface. There were hidden clauses, buried signatures, strange transfers masked in legal jargon. His stomach dropped. It wasn't bankruptcy. It was a setup. He looked up, and his voice came out low, controlled, but full of rage. "Who added this?" No one answered. The lawyers exchanged quick glances, their calm masks slipping. The junior associate's hands twitched nervously. Someone's throat cleared in the corner. The sound of Maria's mop dripping into the bucket became the loudest noise in the room. Richard stood, the chair scraping sharply against the floor. "Who added this?" he said again, louder now. The senior lawyer shifted uncomfortably. "Sir, it's just a standard inclusion, I assure you." "Standard?" Richard barked. "You were about to make me sign away my entire company." His voice thundered against the glass walls, bouncing off the marble floors. Even the assistant outside the room flinched. Maria stood perfectly still, her eyes fixed on him. For years, she had cleaned that same floor where men like him walked without ever noticing her. But now, for the first time, he was looking at her, really looking. Something changed in that moment. The billionaire who once ignored the people serving his coffee or scrubbing his floors was staring into the eyes of the woman who had just saved his life's work. Richard turned toward her slowly. "How did you see it?" he asked quietly, almost in disbelief. Maria blinked. Her voice came out small but clear. "Because I look at everything, sir. It's my job." For a second, he didn't know whether to laugh or cry. All his advisors, his board, his trusted circle, not one of them noticed what she did. He sank back into his chair, staring at the papers. The empire he thought he built on brilliance was about to collapse because of blind trust. And the one person who caught it was the one he never even thanked by name. He rubbed his face, trying to steady his breathing. The lawyers whispered frantically among themselves now, sensing the shift. The power dynamic in that room had flipped, and they could feel it. The billionaire wasn't their puppet anymore. Maria didn't know what would happen next. She could lose her job, maybe worse. But she didn't regret speaking. She thought of her son, the one who used to dream of becoming a lawyer before the illness took him too soon. He used to tell her, "Mom, never let fear silence what's right." Those words gave her strength now. Richard finally spoke, his voice calmer. "I want every draft of this document. Every version. Now." The lawyers hesitated. He slammed his hand on the table. "Now." They rushed to gather files, their perfect composure shattered. And there, in the corner, Maria stood quietly, her heart pounding in her chest, her eyes full of disbelief at what she had just witnessed. The billionaire looked at her one last time before walking out of the room. He didn't say thank you. Not yet. But the look in his eyes said everything: confusion, gratitude, humility, and something else she hadn't seen in him before. Respect. As he disappeared down the hall, the clock on the wall ticked loudly, echoing through the now empty room. Maria exhaled shakily. She turned to leave, her mop still dripping on the floor, her uniform damp with sweat and nerves. But deep down, she knew, this wasn't over. She had uncovered something powerful. Something dangerous. And the truth, once spoken, never goes back to sleep. The morning light slipped through the tall glass panels of the boardroom, slicing the silence like a blade. The billionaire sat there, his once proud shoulders bent, eyes hollow. The papers were spread before him, each line a nail in the coffin of the empire he had built. The clock's hand moved closer to 8 a.m. Every tick echoed like a countdown to his own end. The lawyer leaned forward, fountain pen in hand. "Just sign here, sir." But at that precise moment, the door cracked open. A hesitant knock. Then the familiar face of the cleaning lady appeared, Maria. Her uniform was faded, her hands rough, but her eyes carried something sharper than fear. "Excuse me," she said softly. "I think there's a mistake in your documents." The lawyer frowned, irritated. "This is a private meeting, miss. Please." "No, let her speak," the billionaire interrupted, his voice strangely hollow. Maria stepped in, clutching a wrinkled folder against her chest. I was cleaning the conference room last night," she stammered, "and I saw these papers on the desk. I shouldn't have looked, I know, but I noticed something." She opened her folder and laid down a printed spreadsheet, numbers circled in red ink. "This column, these debts, they've been copied twice. Someone duplicated the same losses to make it look like your company owes double what it does." The room froze. The lawyer blinked. "That's impossible." But Maria's voice gained strength. "No, it's not. My husband was an accountant before he passed. I learned how to keep books from him. This is fraud." For the first time in months, something flickered in the billionaire's eyes: hope. He leaned forward, studying the sheet. She was right. The figures matched perfectly. He looked up at his attorney, whose face had gone pale. "Who prepared these?" he asked. "Mr. Collins," the lawyer stammered, referring to the CFO, the same man who had been urging him to sell his assets all month. Within minutes, security cameras were checked. Emails pulled. The truth unraveled like a thread from a burning cloth. Collins had planned to buy the company for himself through a shadow deal, using a shell corporation. The billionaire had been seconds away from signing his legacy into a thief's hands. He turned back to Maria. "You just saved everything I ever built," he whispered. Maria shook her head. "I didn't save your company, sir. I just told the truth." Her tone was humble, yet filled with quiet dignity. The billionaire stared at her for a long time. The woman he had never noticed, who mopped floors and emptied trash cans, had just done what his board of advisors, lawyers, and accountants couldn't. As security escorted the corrupt CFO away, the billionaire looked out the window. His city, his empire, his purpose, all restored by the honesty of one forgotten worker. He turned back to her. "Maria, from this day forward, you're not cleaning offices anymore." Tears filled her eyes. "Sir, you're going to work with me directly. Every number, every file, your eyes will see it before mine." She tried to speak, but her voice broke. The billionaire smiled faintly, for the first time in months. "You reminded me that integrity doesn't come with a title. It lives in people who care." Outside, the sun had risen fully now. The clock struck 8, but instead of signing his defeat, the billionaire signed a new beginning. The pen still lay on the table, glinting beneath the morning light. It was the same pen he had almost used to sign away his empire just minutes before. The billionaire picked it up slowly, turning it between his fingers, as though weighing its meaning. That pen, once a symbol of his authority, had nearly become his undoing. Now, it felt like something else entirely, a reminder of how close pride had come to destroying him. He stood in silence, watching Maria as she nervously folded the edges of her cleaning gloves. She looked small in the grand room, a simple woman in a faded uniform surrounded by marble floors, leather chairs, and men in suits who hadn't looked her in the eye once. Yet at that moment, everyone in that room knew who had truly saved them. "Maria," the billionaire said, his voice low but steady, "you didn't just save my business. You saved me from myself." She shook her head. "Sir, I only told you what I saw." He smiled sadly. "No. You did what I forgot how to do. You paid attention. You cared." The words hung heavy in the air. The lawyer, the assistants, the board members, all were silent, realizing how blind they had become to the people who kept their world standing. The billionaire turned to the glass wall overlooking the city. For years, he had believed power came from control, from owning things, commanding people, and building towers that reached the clouds. But now, as he watched the morning sun spill across the skyline, he saw it differently. Power wasn't in control. It was in character. Later that day, he made an announcement no one expected. The company would be restructured, not sold. Every department, from executives to janitors, would undergo ethics training and financial review. But more than that, he launched a new program, the Second Look Initiative, dedicated to hiring and promoting workers who had been overlooked, the silent, unseen people who kept everything running. And at the center of it all was Maria. He offered her a new role, Ethics and Transparency Advisor. The title made her laugh through her tears. "Sir, I don't even have a college degree." "You don't need one," he said gently. "You already have something rarer, honesty when no one's watching." Weeks later, as his company stabilized, he kept one small, framed reminder on his desk, the unsigned bankruptcy document. Below it, he had written in black ink, "Never ignore the hands that hold you up." Maria visited his office often, still modest, still carrying her same quiet grace. One day she asked, "Why did you keep that paper, sir?" He smiled. "Because it reminds me that failure isn't what destroys us, blindness does." Outside, the city moved like it always did, cars honking, workers rushing, dreams colliding. But inside that glass tower, something had shifted forever. The billionaire had learned that wealth could build walls, but humility opened doors. That a single act of courage, even from the most invisible person, could stop a kingdom from falling. And that morning, when the clock had struck 8, the world didn't witness the end of a fortune. It witnessed the rebirth of a man. Moral: never underestimate the eyes that see when you don't. Dignity doesn't wear a suit, sometimes it carries a mop.